Okay, class, picking up where we left off at, we were about to start example 2, and we want to simplify this. Look here at our denominator. We have a binomial with two radicals here, so we have to use the conjugate. And remember, the conjugate is this binomial, but with a different operation, the opposite operation. So we would do the square root of 5 plus the square root of 3 in the numerator and the denominator. Now, one thing first, let's just multiply the numerator. That will give us 7 times the square root of 5 plus 7 times the square root of 3. Because remember, we will do the distributive property. Now, our denominator will go like this. You can multiply the first two terms and the last two terms. Square root of 5 times the square root of 5, we know will give us 5. And negative square root of 3 times the positive square root of 3 will give us minus 3. Now, 7 square root of 5 plus 7 square root of 3, we can't do anything with that, so we will bring it down. And 5 minus 3 is just 2, and we're done. Okay, now, we come here to B. Now, we still want to do the conjugate. The conjugate here would be 5 times the square root of x plus 2 all over 5 square root of x plus 2. If we take the opposite operation here. So again, we'll multiply our numerator. That'll give us 30 times the square root of x plus 12 all over. Now, unlike A, I'm going to do this all the way out. I'm going to show every step this time. So we will have 5 square root of x times 5 square root of x. And then we will have 5 square root of x times 2. And then we will have this negative 2 times 5 square root x. And then remember, I have a little lack of space, but as you all can see, this is for the denominator. Then we have minus 2 times 2. So now, we will have 30 square root of x plus 12, still for our numerator. Now we get here to our denominator. We know 5 times 5 is 25. Square root of x times square root of x is the square root of x squared. And then 5 times 2 is 10. We add 10 square root of 2. Negative 2 times 5 square root of x. Well, actually, it's supposed to be 10 square root of x, not square root of 2. That was an error on my part. Then we will have negative 2 times 5 square root of x, which will give us negative 10 square root of x. And negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4. So we have 30 square root of x plus 12. Now, when we look here at our denominator, you notice this 10 square root of x and a minus 10 square root of x will simplify each other out. So then we will have 25 square root of x squared would just be x, and then minus 4. And then there's nothing more we could do with this problem. And we're done. Now we come here to C. Now we add 2 square root of 3 over 4 plus the square root of 2. So now we will do the conjugate again. We will do 4 minus the square root of 2 all over 4 minus the square root of 2. Now because we did everything out in this second example, we don't have to show every step for each problem. So let's go through this. Let's do the numerator first. 2 square root of 3 times 4 will give us 8 times the square root of 3. 2 square root of 3 times the negative square root of 2 will give us a negative 2 square root of 6. Now that's all over. Now remember, when we're multiplying these conjugates, we can do the first term by the first term and the last term by the last term because the middle terms will simplify out. So 4 times 4 is 16. A positive square root of 2 times the negative square root of 2 will give us a minus 2. So now we will add 8 square root of 3 minus 2 square root of 6. all over 14. Now 8 and 2 both has 2 in common, so we can factor out a 2. We would be left with 4 square root of 3 minus the square root of 6, all over 14. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 14 7 times. So our final answer would be 4 times the square root of 3 minus the square root of 6, all over 7. That will be our final answer. Now we will scroll on to the next page. For example 4, it says let f of x equals 3 times the square root of x minus 5, and g of x equals 4 times the square root of x minus 2. Find a simplified equation for each function. Okay, so now first we had f minus g. So we would take what f of x is equal to, which is 3 times the square root of x minus 5, and then we will subtract that from what g of x is equal to, which is 4 times the square root of x minus 2. Now we would keep everything in this parenthesis the same. We would just drop the parentheses. And then because there's a minus in front of this parenthesis, we change the sign of everything. So this would become a negative 4 square root of x, then plus 2. Now we would combine like terms. 3 square root of x minus 4 square root of x will give us a negative 1 square root of x. And negative 5 plus 2 will give us a negative 3. Now, of course, you know, we do not have to leave this negative 1 out front. We can just make this negative square root of x minus 3. And then we are done, because it's assumed to be a 1 here anyway. Now we come here, we have f divided by g. So basically, just writing this out, this is really f of x divided by g of x. Now, when we write this, f of x we know is equal to 3 square root of x minus 5. And g of x is 4 square root of x minus 2. Now we know we need to take the conjugate of our denominator, which would be 4 square root of x plus 2, all over 4 square root of x plus 2. So now we will multiply. Now unlike the other problems, we have a binomial times a binomial in the numerator and denominator. So we would have to multiply this out. So let me give myself a little bit more room here. And what I'll do is this here to isolate this. I'll start right here. So I had 3 square root of x times 4 square root of x plus 3 square root of x times 2 minus 5 times 4 square root of x and minus 5 times 2. So that took care of the numerator. Now the denominator is the same. We'll take the first value times the first value. 4 square root of x times 4 square root of x will just give us 16x. And negative 2 times positive 2 we know will give us a minus 4. So now we will multiply our numerator. This would be 3 times 4 is 12 square root of x, and square root of x will just give us x. Plus 3 square root of x times 2, which will give us 6 square root of x. Negative 5 times 4 square root of x would be negative 20 square root of x. And negative 5 times 2 will give us negative 10. And this is all over 16x minus 4. Now, we combine like terms. We add 12x. 6 square root of x minus 20 square root of x will give us negative 14 square root of x. And this will be minus 10 all over 16x minus 4. Now, we look here at our numerator. 12, 14, and 10, they all have 2 in common. So we can factor out a 2. And that will leave us 6x minus 7 square root of x minus 5. But here in our denominator, which we normally don't do, 16x and 4, they both have 4 in common. So we could basically, well, actually what would make it a little easier is this here. Since all we was able to factor out was 2 here, let's just factor out 2 here. Because we know that if we factor out 4, that will still leave us a parenthesis in the bottom. So we factor out a 2, that will leave us 8x minus 2. So these 2's will simplify out, and then our final answer will be 6x minus 7 square root x minus 5 all over 8x minus 2. And we cannot simplify anything else out, so we are done.